Welcome to the AlphaWarrior Show. We're excited to share diverse perspectives and expert insights with you. Please note that the views and information expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the AlphaWarrior Show, its management, or our partners. Each of our affiliates and sponsors and partnerships is a separate entity, and their opinions are their own. Today's content is provided for information and educational purposes and should not be taken as specific advice, whether it be financial, medical, or legal. While we strive to present accurate and useful information, we cannot guarantee its completeness or relevance to your specific situation. We provide all information as is and encourage you to consult with a professional advisor to address your specific individual needs. Your use of any information from this broadcast is entirely at your own risk. By listening further, you agree to identify and protect the AlphaWarrior Show and its associates from any claims or damages arising from your use of this broadcast content. Changes to this disclaimer may be made at any time and will be done effectively immediately upon posting or broadcasting. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you find the episode both informative and thought-provoking. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the next generation of warfare, psychological warfare. In modern conflict, the mind is a potent weapon. Discover General Michael T. Flynn's groundbreaking guide, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unlock tactics, strategies, and the mindset to navigate this cognitive battlefield that we all find ourselves in. Equip yourself against manipulation and emerge unscathed. Unleash your potential. Order now.
How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the AlphaWarrior Show. I'm your host, Alpha. My apologies. We're a little late out of the gate. 100% my fault. I'd like to say something cool like saving the world, but the day just got the best of me, you guys. That's what happened. But I do like SR7 11966 says head call check, iced tea check, popcorn check. You left one out. Notepad and pen check. Because we got off to a late start, we are going to bypass our commercials and our sponsors. We'll tag that into the back end of the show. So do me a favor, y'all. Stay tuned. Once we're done with the show, support the people that support this show. But we're talking Operation Gladio, episode 21 in this series. I have Colonel Towner, who's down here in the green room, just waiting to get in here because I've had her waiting. So what we will do, guys, like I said, go straight into content, support the people, support this show at the back end. We are talking world wildlife fun. And without further ado, for all you impatient people in the chat, let's bring up the woman you really want to hear from tonight, you guys. Colonel Towner, again, how are you doing, ma'am?
Good. How are you?
I'm a busy bee. I'm running around and, I need father time to work with me a little bit more, like when I say like pause, slow it down, take us back 30 minutes. I just wish he cooperated more. That's all.
I understand that completely.
You're like, oh, I'm speechless. But World Wildlife Fund. I remember when we kind of touched on this, given the panda symbol that it had on
Yeah.
there, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of the people that are awake kind of understand the reference to that. But what are we going to dive into with the World Wildlife Fund tonight?
So let me back up for just a second because I want to set the stage for it. And I want to give, because I've really been driving this home, I want to give everybody that's kind of goes from forum to forum with me a little bit of new information as well that I've recently discovered. I was unaware that there was a program after World War II. And of course, after World War II is the birth of Operation Gladio. So I had never heard of this. It's called the Point 4 program. It was set up in 1949, right after the CIA was set up by Harry Truman. And basically, he couched this as, the big boogeyman, the Soviet Union, who, by the way, we were just in a war with on our side, is going to pose some problems for us. So we need to go to all of these developing countries and win their hearts and minds so that they're not going to give the communist countries consideration. And it was immediately decried throughout the United States, who, we had just suffered significant loss in World War II, although we quote unquote won the war. They didn't want to have anything to do with an international program or, foreign aid or any of that stuff. There was a lot of controversy. There were two guys that Truman brought in. One of them's name was Clark Clifford. The other guy is George Elsey. Now, what's interesting about this is if you look at Clark Clifford, one of the very first things you see is he worked for Truman, JFK, Johnson, and Jimmy Carter. He spent most of his time in the White House, President's Intelligence Advisory Board, blah, blah, blah. And if you go down far enough in his repertoire, you find out that he was involved in the BCCI Bank, which, for those of you who's followed Operation Gladio, immediately that was the massive money laundering bank that was set up when the drug and weapons trafficking, money laundering outgrew the Vatican Bank. It was set up in Pakistan, totally corrupt. And this guy was involved in that. Also, his background tells you he's intelligence by looking, first of all, at his Navy history. He only spends 2 years in the Navy. Nobody just spends 2 years in the Navy. And he's in and out of a lot of very interesting scenarios. So he also, the other guy, George Elsey, he worked for FDR and Truman. So he's a little bit older, Princeton, Harvard, the normal pedigree for someone like this. Spends a lot of time in the White House as well. And he became president of the American Red Cross. And for those of you who followed Operation Gladio, you understand American Red Cross is much more than an actual Red Cross entity. It was used for the CIA, and also before the CIA, they used the American Red Cross basically to do the mission over to Russia to start the Bolshevik revolution. So it's been, the fact that he's involved in that tells you everything you need to know about this. But this organization came to my attention because of a thing called the Chicago Boys. The Chicago Boys, which I thought, because I was reading something about the Chile coup for the CIA that installed Pinochet and killed President Allende. And I'm like, the Chicago Boys, what the hell? And so it was actually a program, when you start looking back at it, that was started a long time ago, about like in the 50s by the State Department. Read that as CIA. And it had to do with the 0.4 program. So it was, and this is what really got me going. This program was set up, this Chicago Boys program was set up and funded by the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation to create a Chilean economic think tank. And basically, if you go down and look, just Google Chicago Boys, go down and look at the jobs that these guys ended up in Chile. So what happens is they get them all educated and all ready to go. And then they go in and they coup the government. And all of these U.S. educated vultures fall in on the government of Chile. And they're all funded by the Rockefeller and Ford Foundation. And they end up, every one of them ended up as the president of the central bank, the economic advisor to the president of the central bank, the budget director, the minister of finance, the minister of labor, the minister of economics. So they basically had already trained up an entire freaking government by the time the coup got there. And most importantly, the this government that they have already trained, that just kind of falls in after Pinochet comes to power, they nicely say, and I love the way they say this, because I'm going to tell you what they say, and then I'm going to tell you what they're really saying. It says that they instituted all of these wonderful economic policies of free and open trade and democracy and all of those buzzwords. And it goes so far as to say they were models used by Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher as far as policies and economic reform. But what they actually did was Allende had kicked all of the foreign-owned companies out of Chile, told the copper mine get out, told the ITT, the phone company, to get out. He wanted all of that stuff ran by Chileans. He didn't want the U.S. Oligarchs down there running all their crap. So he gets killed. Pinochet comes in, and Pinochet basically opens up Chile for rape and murder, and all of the oligarchs to come in like vultures and suck all of the life out of Chile. That is repackaged as free and open trade internationally. That's not what happened. You know what I mean? So when you start looking, and oh, by the way, if you go down to the bottom of that, it says there's something else for you to look at. The Berkeley Mafia. If you click on the Berkeley Mafia, it starts talking about the exact same thing, only in Indonesia, after they couped that government. So I was like, holy crap. This is like the gift that keeps on giving. It apparently, this Truman Doctrine that was set up, that Eisenhower basically sets up the paramilitary capability to make it happen. So Truman has set up the international program to train everybody, getting ready for Eisenhower to be president. Eisenhower comes in and he sets up Gladio for the paramilitary to bring about the coup. They start cooing all these governments, and then the educated elite that Truman set up falls in on these governments after Eisenhower overthrows them. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So at that point, that's where kind of the World Wildlife Fund comes in. So that takes us through basically the 50s, and they're working throughout South America to set all of this stuff up. And then you jump over to Africa. Well, Africa has fallen apart as far as their old colonial rule. You've got the late 1950s and the early 60s where, we've already covered the Congo where they assassinated Lumumba. That was in 1961, January of 1961. So during that time frame, the freedom movement is all over Africa. Well, they don't want freedom breaking out everywhere because they're going to lose their grip on all of the resources because these are colonial overlords. And so at this time, they set up this World Wildlife Fund. It was set up literally a couple of months. The first planning meeting happened in April of 1961. So just, Lumumba, if he had a body, because he didn't literally have a body because they boiled him in acid, but if he had a whole body that had been buried in the ground, he would not even have been cold by the time they're cooking up the ability to recolonize Africa after the quote unquote freedom movement. So the Congo being one of the very first ones, they're going to free the African countries from their colonial overlords only to recolonize them by using nonprofits like the WWF. And I'll explain how they did that. So ironically enough, its actual birthday for the World Wildlife is September 11th. Not even kidding. It was set up in Switzerland, and there's a whole bunch of people that are involved in this. But one of the key people is a guy by the name of Julian Huxley, and he's a eugenicist. He thinks that only the elite people get to live. Everybody else should die. Big Planned Parenthood guy, big into humanism, the Gnostic mysticism, all of that crap is swirling around this whole organization. So he is also the first president of an organization called the British Humanist Association, which basically is, we get to live, you die type scenario. He also won a special award in the category of Planned Parenthood called World Population. So you get the idea of who this guy is. He's instrumental in setting up the World Wildlife Fund. So the guy that doesn't believe we all ought to live is going to be running the World Wildlife Fund. And he obviously is Aldous Huxley, Aldous, Huxley's brother. He's a universalist. He's the guy that wrote The Brave New World. His and this definitely stays in the family. Their grandfather created a thing called the X Club, which was a dinner club in the UK that basically, their claim to fame was to have created a publication called Nature. And it basically, all of the members of the Royal Society was all part of his quote unquote dinner club. And dinner club's going to come back in a minute. Just so everybody knows, in late 1800s, early 1900s, that was the thing to do in London, is they had dinner clubs. All of the men got together once a month at rotating people's houses. There's a lot of weird things that were said to have went on during those dinner club meetings, not just discussing how to kill people. But so I'm going to go through a couple of the people's names. Another guy was Edward Max Nicholson. He's an internationalist, globalist, one world government. He founded the Oxford University Exploration Club. You're going to sense or see the developing of this nature theme. They all go on these international jaunts all over, but they spend very little time on the ground. They like fly over.
And you said his name was Edward Max Nicholas?
Edward Max Nicholson.
Nicholson, okay.
Yeah. Nichholson. And so this club, along with others, the Oxford Club, supposedly was exploring nature, but also had all the experts necessary to scout for resources. So they used nature as as the cover, if you will, for covert operations to go into foreign countries to do resource exploration. So they said they were there, trying to count how many elephants there were, when actually they were doing excavations for what kind of minerals laid in the ground. They did this in Israel, in the desert area of Israel. But this is the same guy later on that is going to be in charge of UNESCO. And UNESCO plays heavily in this whole World Wildlife Fund scenario as well. And I'll explain to you how in just a few minutes. But this same guy that's leading these geologists, disguised as nature conservation, trying to figure out, because what they're going to do is, after they decide where all of the minerals are, they're going to come back under the guise of the World Wildlife Fund and UNESCO and declare these national parks. So the Congo has all of these big national parks. Angola does, Nambia does, Tanzania does. All of these national parks were pre-scouted for where the resources are. And they tell the countries, basically, I'll explain to you how this is done. So in the 1960s, and we'll use the Congo since we've already covered it, they have the guy, Mubatu, that got installed by the CIA after they assassinate Lumumba. He's bought and paid for by the CIA. The World Bank loans him, and I'm making this number up, but let's just say it's $5 billion. He can't pay it back. He pockets some of the money. He recycles some of that money back to the, everybody that's got their hand out. And all the country is left with, the Congo, is a debt, and the people can't pay the debt. So the World Wildlife Fund comes to Mubatu and says, hey, that $5 billion we loaned you that you can't pay back, wink, wink. If you give us this area over here, we're going to call it a national park, and we'll take care of everything. We'll supply the park rangers. We'll do everything. Just let us have the land. So, of course, that guy who now has foreign bank accounts with, hundreds of millions of dollars in it, it's like, sure, go ahead. And then, he turns around and goes, oh, look what I did. I got rid of our debt. So he looks good. They look good. We're going to get a national park out of this. The problem is that because of the resources that are on that national park, and oh, by the way, indigenous people live in the woods because these are like rainforests and stuff like that. They all had to be moved. So when they decided that they were going to move these indigenous people, if they didn't move, they'd kill them. And they set up, weirdly enough, a lot of them were right on the boundaries of other countries. So they would set up, in the case of like South Africa, they set up these parks on the border of the other country. Then they put paramilitary Gladio people in these national parks as quote unquote park rangers. They launched military missions into the other countries to destabilize them. And in the case of South America, they went into Angola, they went into several countries along the border, and then turned around and said, oh, you guys are having a lot of problems. For South America, who everybody was given a ration of crap because they were all racist, and they were apartheid government, they were saying, hey, you're making us look a lot better because you guys are all unstable countries. Well, they were unstable because France was giving weapons to Israel, who was giving weapons to South Africa to launch military Gladio missions for coups into Angola and Tanzania and all of these other Nambia countries along their border, Rhodesia, Angola. So they were using World Wildlife Fund national parks to do all this stuff. And again, in the case of South Africa, they found prisons in the national park. They found stashes of weapons. And so there's this guy who is doing filming for the World Wildlife Fund. And he goes down to South Africa, and they're telling him, as he's doing the documentary for him, he's like a cinematologist, and they're telling him that there was a million elephants killed. And the guy's not stupid. He's like, really? Because he's looking around at these, like in the areas where these elephants in the forest, where these national parks, where these elephants were supposed to have been killed, you've got guys that are like cattle herders, the indigenous people that are living in the woods. They're ranchers, they're cattle. And he's like, they don't even have guns. How'd they kill 1 million elephants? And so everything that he's seeing as he's doing these films, he's like, something's not right here. So after he was finished with the documentary that he was doing for the World Wildlife Fund, he pays for himself to go back, and he starts snooping around. And he finds out that most of the elephants were murdered with landmines that had been planted by these paramilitary folks from South Africa. They were shot, and they were like blown up. And whether it was 1 million or not, who knows? But none of the stories that the World Wildlife Fund was telling were truthful. None of them. So
if I can interject right there real quick, Colonel,
sure.
Because as you're describing this, and I know it's, well, maybe a different organization by name, but I start thinking about like Catholic Charities and the way they're building all these camps south of our border where they're doing humanitarian aid, and then the cartel helps them come up the Darien Gap They cross our border, and now they're being placed all over our country. All these illegals, military age men, and it just makes me think of what you're saying. What they use these wildlife preservations for, to get everybody congregated there, and then they could go and execute their missions. I mean, it's just a very eerie similarity where the only thing different is just the name of the entity.
So we're going to find that a lot of the world, the NGOs, have been used exactly that way. And interestingly enough, the Catholic Church, the more I look into this, because when we get over to doing a deep dive in Vietnam, and some of these other countries, the Philippines was another one, all of South America, actually, the precursor to all of this. And we talked about how they overthrew Hawaii even before, so even before there was a CIA. So the people that were there that overthrew the Queen in Hawaii were Baptist missionaries. So they have used the Catholic Church to go into most of all of Latin America. And I mean, like 100 years before now, 200 years. And they were basically kind of like the Advon team, to use a military term, the advanced team that goes in and kind of softens and gets the lay of the land for the international syndicate to come in after everybody's kind of gotten softened up. That's almost what this is feeling like to me. So you're absolutely right. These people hide in all of these NGOs. As a matter of fact, I even found one where they literally, okay, so we're going to transition to this because this is the perfect transition. I was watching a video the other day of Eric Prince. Somebody had sent it to me. And he is saying that in the video that we basically just need to go back into Africa because none of those guys are leaders, and they don't know how to be in charge. And we just basically need to take it back over. And I was like, what the hell? To me, that was one of the most arrogant, ignorant things that I had ever heard. Because
It sounds like he wants his. For those that don't know, this dude was at the top of the totem pole when it came to Blackwater.
Yeah, he owned Blackwater.
Oh, okay. So I knew he was.
He owned it.
Very high up. Yeah.
No, he owned it.
Yeah.
And he made his millions of dollars being the Gladio operators that we just talked about. He owned a paramilitary private organization that worked for the CIA doing missions that I just described to you. Okay? So this man made millions of dollars off of destabilizing governments. And he has the audacity to tell the world that Black Africans can't manage themselves and therefore need us to come back in and save them. That to me is just, it was like fingernails on a chalkboard. It just like made me livid, because I then found out that not only has he done missions for the WWF, he's done missions for like Monsanto. He has been paid by these international syndicate people to infiltrate international syndicate movements. So, for example, in several of the African countries where they have set up these national parks, and one of them was in the Serengeti in that area, like the Congo, Tanzania has them, and they have some of their own international syndicate fellow members that own hotel suites or chains. They will go in and create uh, a hotel that caters to safari people. And they will do it in these national parks that they don't allow the indigenous people to live in anymore. And anybody that mobilizes against them, they hire the Eric Princes of the world to infiltrate their organizations to destroy them. And I found the documentation where he actually has been hired by them to do that type of thing. And that to me is like, are you kidding me right now? And oh, by the way, he lives, I forget the country, Oman or the UAE, and he moved there after his company got exposed for all the shit it was doing that was not proper, because they don't have an extradition treaty with the United States. He doesn't even live in the United States anymore.
Huh. That is pretty gnarly. And I have it up on the screen. I don't know if you can see it, Colonel. For those that don't know, I brought up I had Eric Prince up there, but then I brought up Blackwater because there was a change of names, which is Constellas. Constellas ended up merging with Triple Canopy. But it's crazy that he's in a place where there's no extradition.
Yeah.
Because Constellas and Triple Canopy do a lot of work with our everyday law enforcement. Like a lot of work. Like there are some very strong relationships between Constellas and our law enforcement. Put it this way. If you guys have been watching the Super Bowls the last couple of years, a lot of those people that you think are cops, that's Constellas. Especially their K9 teams. I know that by personal experience.
So I would tell you that that is the type of operation that they will use domestically to do a Gladio operation here. Because they've done that so many times other places. So going back to the World Wildlife Foundation, you have also UNESCO, which is the UN counterpart to the WWF. After the WWF goes in and secures a national park site with resources that they're going to exploit, UNESCO comes in and dubs it a UNESCO approved site, which gives all of these people that are in on this scam funding through the UN. And it also provides them another layer of protection because once you're designated a UNESCO site, you basically have to ask permission to do anything in your country. One of the countries in Africa wanted to build a electrical power generation. There's like 5% of the people that have reliable power in the entire country. And they wanted to build a hydro plant on one of the rivers. And between the WWF and UNESCO, they weren't going to let them do it. And finally, fairly recently, the president was like, screw, I think it was Tanzania. The president says, screw you. I'm doing it anyway. I don't care. This is my country. But the person or the company that they were going to hire to do it wasn't one of their approved contractors. So that was kind of the big holdup. So this is an extortion program, 100%. It's control and extortion.
I just gotta say it because it's in the back of my head. You remember after I told you about that opportunity that was presented for me, and I turned that down. It wasn't but maybe tops 3 or 4 months later. You know who attempted to recruit me?
Who?
Constellas.
Uh, well, fortunately, you didn't take it because I wouldn't
No,
have met you.
no,
Um,
I did not. I
right.
did not.
But I now wish you would have, so we would have known what the inside looked like. I would have
Um,
loved to have been able to talk to you about all of this stuff if you'd have seen it from the inside.
I'd
You know what I
just be
mean?
I'd be behind some bars.
Huh?
I would be behind bars. You
Oh.
have a collect call from an inmate in a federal state. No, I better not laugh because that might happen anyways. Let me knock on my desk for that one.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, anyway, you have, let's see, the same people, they set up all of these different organizations, um, but the key players in the WWF was Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands and Prince Philips of the UK. So Prince Bernhard ends up being the first president of the WWF, and the they launched this program called the 1001 Club, and it's considered a nature trust. Basically, what they did was they got Prince Bernhard's Rolodex and Prince Philip's Rolodex and called up and extorted $10,000 from each of the 1001 members of this quote unquote club. And I just posted today in a thread documentation that the monthly and they rotated countries dinner club comes back again. So they would have a dinner once a month all over the world, out of this 1001 club. And they were basically, if you go through, it's very covert. There's almost nothing available about the 1001 club. As a matter of fact, a guy who posted a whole bunch of stuff on it several years ago, they barred him from ever posting anything on Wikipedia again. And while they have some of his material there now, he's never allowed to do anything on Wikipedia because he had done all the research and posted it onto Wikipedia, and they don't want you to see it. But some of the documentation he found, which I included in that thread, was that several of the members that accompanied the 1001 Club members were CIA. So they're using this as, again, a cloaking device to do intelligence. Because what better place to hide intelligence resources than a wildlife fund that has even your enemies? There's UNESCO sites all over in China and in Russia. And so you can be an intel asset and pose as a part of the 1001 Club coming to inspect, a national park or a UNESCO site or whatever. They are literally using everything. It's just crazy. All right. So I want to talk about one more guy. Anton, his name's Anthony, but they call him Anton Rupert. Rupert. His first name is Anton. He is like a multi-billionaire in South Africa. And he looks remarkably like Rupert Murdoch. I don't know if they're married, or if they're related, not married. That was a Freudian slip. But he funded the executive assistant to Bernhard out of his own pocket. And he also owns mining companies, industrial companies. Weirdly enough, the name of his kind of like holding company is called Rothmans, Rothmans International. Now, weirdly enough, and I don't know how this is all related, Rothschilds is in several of his businesses with him, to include a winery. But this is the guy that makes, he owns Cartier, he owns Mont Blanc pen, all kinds of high end Swiss watches, all kinds of crap. Into liquor, wine. So, these are the guys that float around in this program. And I also found out that people like that you would have normally thought would be against this kind of thing, like Nelson Mandela, when he becomes the president of South Africa, you're like, well, things are going to change. They're going to close off. No, none of that changed. He basically was very good friends with Prince Bernhard and Prince Philip, and basically left everything as it was in South Africa, as far as the national parks, the launching of military missions from there, everything. So I want to take a second and look at this 1001 Club, because I got to go back to my thread that I did today.
I have your thread up on the screen as well.
Okay. So let's see.
And for those that are wondering, if this is your first time catching one of the Operation Gladio series, down below in the description of the show, you'll find show links. It'll have the link to the playlist, and then sometime within the next 30 minutes to an hour, depending how many links you've seen me bring up on the screen, I consolidate all those links down into the description. So everything that you've seen me bring up on the screen will be down in the description, usually, like I said, 30 minutes to an hour after the show, when I'm doing the editing. So you can go on there, read it thoroughly yourself, vet it, share it, save it, compile your own records. So for those that are wondering, don't worry, Alpha's got you covered for those links. But go ahead, Colonel.
Okay. So basically, you have the WWF that we just kind of went over, and all of the people that are part of it, and it's both business. Archer Daniel Midland, the Monsanto, all of those people, they're all members of the WWF. They're all, they go to their meetings, everything. But the real power behind the whole thing is this 1001 Club. And like I said, they started off charging people $10,000. The guy that wrote this book about these people, it's now up to 25,000. And there's some kind of financial ongoing commitment, but again, it's such covert. It's hard to nail down all of the different parts of it. But the bottom line is, there's a lot of groups out there like the Bilderbergs, the Committee of 300, the Club of Rome, all of those things we've heard. There's books written about them. You can't hardly find anything about this 1001 Club. This guy spent the better part of a decade. He scoured 35 years worth of newspapers in South Africa, in the Netherlands, in England, everywhere, looking for a mention of the 1001 Club. he bought all of the biographies that had been written about Prince Bernhard, and there were several, like almost 100. And the Orange royal family, it's, at, at all of them. He could not find anything about it. So he kind of tootled along and came back to it over time, and started picking up little pieces of it. So he says, basically, it was established, this 1001 Club, in the early 70s by Prince Bernhard Anton Rupert, the South African guy, and a guy by the name of Charles de Haas, DE space HAES. And these people, kind of the precursor to it was a thing called in 1948, which again coincides exactly with the CIA and Operation Gladio, 1948. The International Union of the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. And guess who set that up? Oh, the same guy, Sir Julian Huxley. So you fast forward from 1948 to 1961, and you've got the WWF. Then you have, let's see, Prince Philip ends up being, because there's an international WWF and then there's a branch in each country. And Prince William was the WWF for UK president. And in 1971 is when this club of 1001 was set up. And according to everything that I can find, it was Anton Rupert's idea to set this thing up. And he pays for the guy that's going to be on the staff, which is this Charles de Haas guy. He's a Belgian South African economist. So Rupert, out of his pocket, pays for him to be on the executive assistant to Bernhard. And he's the guy that starts getting the Rolodexes going and calling everybody and getting their money and getting the whole thing set up. And it's like the who's who of everybody. King Juan Carlos of Spain is part of it. I'll go through some more names as we go through this, but Edmund Rothschild had basically been a member of Rupert's Rothman's tobacco company, and he was one of the very first ones to get a phone call. Also David Rockefeller, he's recruited in 1971, which is basically, let's see, yeah, that's right at the very beginning. And another name that comes up all the time, Peter Wallenberg. The Wallenbergs are the Swedish family that basically owns everything in Sweden. They own Ericsson, they own Bosch, they own everything. And so they're part of this 1001 club. He's also a member of the Bilderbergs, which Rockefeller, basically was kind of the honcho of the Bilderbergs. So you see a lot of overlap. This guy estimates, based on he got a hold of 2 lists of the names of the 1001 people. And there's like, from what he knows about Bilderbergs, there's like a 35% overlap in membership between those 2 organizations, which is very similar to many other organizations that, like the Club of Rome. There is about anywhere from 30 to 40% overlap because that's how they coordinate everything. It's their big club and we're not in it.
No, it's funny you say that, Colonel. I did an interview probably about 2-3 weeks ago with a guy named Dylan. And, a lot of people have seen this map on social media called the Great Awakening Map. However, that's a remake of his original work, but he's done these. The reason I bring it up, it's perfect because I want to connect you guys because you'll see his skill set of what he does. And when I had mentioned Operation Gladio on that, he was very enthusiastic about it. But he has this pyramid. I always talk about the pyramid, and he puts the layers of what you get to the top and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
He made that comment. People that you see at this point in the pyramid are also on this part of the pyramid, but they're also connected with this because he said the same thing. There's a lot of overlap in these different factions, and
Yeah.
as soon as you said that, it reminded me of that conversation, which is interesting because I wanted to connect you guys, anyways. So
Yeah, I'd love it. Okay, so so here's another one. I've not done too much digging on this, but the digging I did do was scary as hell. There's another covert society called the Pilgrim Society. And it's as much into all of this. I just don't have the Gladio pieces laid out yet. But it's definitely on my dissection list. But the let's see. The if you start mapping out who's been in charge of all of the WWF branches in the different countries, they all start to make sense because it's like they've been playing musical chairs with industry, much like what we see happen in Washington D.C. happens in this arena as well. So let's see. Here's one guy that I wanted to bring up. So they go on a trip, and this trip, I wanted to give you a couple of examples. One of them was a polar bear research station trip to Hudson Bay. One of them was a 17-day cruise to the Indonesian archipelago on an 80-passenger cruise ship. And one of them was a 5-day trip to Nepal. And for like 30 of them, where they met the Nepal royal family and visited different sites. One of the people that was with him was a guy by the name of Francis Kellogg, not related to the food people, but Francis Kellogg. If you look him up, he's very, very interesting. Mining. Okay, so he basically was part of the founding crew for the WWF. He's a mining executive. He was in the OSS. He was in the CIA. He was the chairman of an organization called the International Rescue Committee. Now, this is going to scare the hell out of you because this is decades ago. Also, he was chairman of the International Rescue Committee until William Casey took over that job in 1966, the future CIA director. So you've got a CIA asset as chairman, and it's going to be taken over by another CIA agent, William Casey. So if you look at this International Rescue Committee, you're going to find out some very interesting things. This committee basically goes everywhere there's a Gladio operation creating refugees and picks up all of the refugees and brings them to the United States. It's been doing that since the 1950s. And you can see immediately the things, your brain just starts clicking. So you go create all of the turmoil over there, and then you go over, and do you know what they were doing with all of those people? Can you guess?
Human trafficking.
Number one, but they interview every single one of them to be an intelligence asset. They already speak the language. Their reward is coming to the United States. Is that crazy? They have every piece of this figured out. And they set it up back in the 1940s and 50s.
And the connections, I mean, they're just interesting. Like back to this William Casey, I still have him on the screen. And, you know, Jesuit affiliate, Fordham University is where he comes from. You know, it just, just these things just seem to have certain themes to them that just kind of stay consistent, you know. And once again, you know, bring it back to the Catholic charities. I don't know. It just, when you keep seeing the same type of themes popping up, I mean, you can't really ignore that. Like, you have to pay attention to it.
You have to. So if you go back and you look at the International Rescue Committee, like back in the day, I've not checked out all of these people, but you have the William Casey, who basically aided that when he was there. He was in charge of resettling the North Vietnamese refugees to the South. And that was part of a ploy that this is back in the 1950s. I don't know how much you know about Vietnam, but I've learned a whole lot. I thought I knew a lot, but basically their game was go in the North, use Catholic charities who had already basically saturated all of Vietnam, with a lot of them had been converted to Catholics. So they used the Catholic Church in North Vietnam to propagandize those people in that the communists were coming, they were all going to get killed. So they all needed almost 1 million people. They airlifted and put on ships and brought down to the South. They had not, their families had, you know, been in their villages for 1,000 years. They'd never been they'd never left their villages, nothing. So they scared the shit out of them, put them on an airplane or a boat, put them in the South, and then basically use those people being in the South and called them North Vietnamese, and basically slaughtered tons of them because they didn't get along with the South. And the South was basically ostracizing them. And then they had the whole Phoenix program where they ratted them all out. And then they used them anytime they needed to convince somebody that there'd be an attack. The whole thing was just basically smoke and mirrors. It was all made up. But William Casey was in charge of that resettling program. And this is the guy, it was forced resettlement is what I'm getting at. There was nothing voluntary about it. And I just discovered this piece of it. So it's going to be interesting to go back and look at this and the dates and how it lines up with the rest of the coups, to see what the overlap is. Daniel Moynihan was part of this international rescue. Senator Claiborne Pell was part of it. Thomas Lebrecht, which is the CEO of Chase Manhattan, was part of it. Let's see. The Queen of Jordan, the Shah. Oh, and Larry Fink, Janet Napolitano. How's that?
I wasn't expecting to hear that last name.
Yeah, all part of the International Rescue Committee. And let's see, some overseers or advisors: Condoleezza Rice, Madeleine Albright, Colin Powell, Timothy Geithner, Arthur Scholzberger. I think that's the New York Times guy. Tom Brokaw, Michael Blumenthal. So this is just crazy.
Now, those names didn't surprise me. But
Yeah.
on that one, those are, unfortunately, but I recognize those very much.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's that one. All right. So moving on.
And I want to bring up the image of that pyramid. I went back and looked at it real quick. And I didn't have a chance to check it, so I don't know how great the quality would be, but just wanted to see people to see what I was referencing. So it's very small here, but it just kind of shows, all the different people, the corporations down here in the bottom, obviously the Freemason symbols, and it builds its way to the top. But that's the one where it was like, different tiers you'll have crossover.
I've seen one that's just a regular sheet. I've not seen the pyramid. It'll be interesting to see if the 1001 Club is on there.
I will take a look. I will zoom into that one.
Yeah.
I am curious to that.
So let's see. There was one other point that I wanted to make. Let me get down here so I can find it. Okay, so here's just some of the people. We've already talked about Prince Bernhard, and Phillips, and then Anton Rupert. But there's the Oppenheimers from South Africa, David and Lawrence Rockefeller, Henry Ford II, Robert McNamara, the Bechtel family, the Watson family of IBM, Robert Anderson of the American oil firm Arco, Maurice Strong, Conrad Black, and Peter Monk of Canada, the British and the French Rothschilds, Agnelli, who is the owner of Fiat, the Wallenberg family, the Lippen family from Belgium, the Liechtenstein royal family, and Liechtenstein, excuse me, Liechtenstein is the country where all of the money laundering banks are at. And let's see. Several of these people, this is one part I wanted to tell you about. Back in the early 70s, when the 1001 Club was established, Stanford Research Institute, SRI International, had a lot of Bechtel, and I don't know if any people know what that is. It's a large defense contractor, like very large, like the largest. If it's not the largest, it's like in the top 3. They do everything. But Bechtel is very involved in this Stanford Research Institute. Virtually all Stanford Research Institute directors have visited the Bohemian Grove, where the Bechtels famously dominate Camp Mandalay because they're there every year. On the International Advisory Board of Stanford Research Institute were also the Agnelli Fiat guy and Nick Kamel, who basically had a high up position in Shell Oil and worked for Anton Rupert, the South African guy in Malaysia. John Loudon, who was a founding member of the World Wildlife Fund. and Oppenheimer, Marcus Wallenberg. So you see, you can just start seeing the overlap here. There's also a guy by the name of Paulo Filho, who was a CIA contact in Brazil, and the controversial Saudi arms dealer Aiden Khashoggi. They can all be found on the board of SRI. McNamara could be found at Caltech, and that is another kind of counterpart to SRI, I guess. So this Stanford Research Institute, and if I'm not mistaken, that just got shut down. That's the one that kind of got outed for election fraud and stuff.
How do you spell his last name again on Apollo's?
Which one?
The Apollo. It was like F.
Paulo Filho.
Okay.
Filho.
It brings up a fighter for me. So
there's also a big correlation, and I'll just go over a few names with the 1001 Club and the JFK assassination, because several of the 1001 Club members had ties to Permadex, and Permadex was tied to the JFK assassination. But people like Mortimer Bloomfield, Tiber Rosenbaum, Pierre Schlellenberger, John Schlesinger, the Rockefellers, the Hunt family, all had ties to JFK assassination. And this is hilarious because several members of the 1001 Club actually had links to the BCCI bank, which we all know as the drug launderer for the CIA. Many of them had overlap with Mossad, CIA, Mafia, and covert networks. So just to name a few of them, the BCCI chairman, Agha Abadi, it's Agha, and his last name is Abedi. And I just wanted to read to you what this guy says about him. The co-founder and chairman of BCCI, which went down in the most massive banking scandal ever. The bank was a money laundering service for the CIA, the Saudis, the Pakistani ISI. But apparently Abedi and his partners were so greedy and corrupt that the CIA and various Western governments were unable to keep them out of trouble. The role of the Bank of England was investigated by the Pilgrim Society member who became a member of the Order of the Garter. So, in other words, they investigated themselves. Another guy that was involved in that, Salam bin Laden, half-brother of bin Laden, business partner of the Bushes, killed in 1988 plane crash after his involvement in the BCCI became known.
Come on.
Not kidding. Nobody wanted him talking. He was actually assassinated. Dr. Alfred Hartman, quite possibly an even bigger player in the BCCI scandal than the bank's founder, 1001 Club member, Abedi, director Rothschild and Son London, this Dr. Alfred Hartman. He is the director of part of the Rothschild empire. He was president of the Rothschild Bank in Zurich. He was the vice president of the New York Inter-Maritime Bank in Geneva. which was, I don't know if you've ever come across Bruce Rappaport. Bruce Rappaport is a Swiss-Israeli businessman, widely suspected as being part of the Mossad and the CIA, and hung out all the time with William Casey, who we already talked about. He was a stakeholder in the Bank of New York, and through this bank was involved in money laundering billions of dollars with the BCCI bank president. Let's see. He was also part of the Bank de Commerce placement, and the he was a director on the Banco Nacional Lavaro, which is the BNL, which was part of the CIA money laundering, and was accused of providing $3 billion in loans to Saddam Hussein for nuclear, chemical, and ballistic missile programs just before the Gulf War. He also was he was a BCCI director and had links to the Medellin cartel money laundering in conjunction with the Rothschild Bank.
Jeez.
Is that crazy?
Oh, I'm reading right here too, the philanthropy part on his Wikipedia. Rapport gave millions of dollars to the Jewish and non-Jewish organizations, including orphanages, daycare centers, research institutes, and hospitals in the United States, Israel, and elsewhere. His wife, Ruth Rappaport, was the co-president of the Geneva branch of the Women's International Zionist Organization. Keep it in the family.
Yeah, exactly. So, you can kind of see the, and I mean, this goes on and on and on. I'll just give you one more.
Well, real quick before we go to the one more, they brought up a note for the Rappaport guy. It says guns for Antigua.
Antigua.
Thank you.
So
Go for it.
that is a whole nother story. That's Operation Gladio 2. He got in trouble because they found out that they were smuggling arms through Antigua. I just read about that like 2 weeks ago. I was like, Antigua, are you kidding me? Yeah, they had a whole big arms smuggling deal going on through Antigua. Oh, and by the way, we had installed through the CIA the guy in charge of Antigua too.
It's crazy because it involves the Colombia.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Colombia, the cartel, Gonzalo Rodriguez Gasha.
Yeah.
And Israeli firearms, just to point that out.
Oh, so that was the whole thing. So you find out that every single one of these countries, Colombia, so I don't know if we've even talked about this, but Colombia, Israel had a program, like a master's degree for being a drug lord. They had an advisor to the Colombian installed president, thanks to the CIA, who, and I'm not going to remember his name, who's Israeli, and he interviewed the drug kingpins in Colombia, and he handpicked the ones he wanted to send to Israel for a year-long training school. And they taught them how to do everything, how to torture people. It was like Schools of America on steroids in Israel. And several of the drug kingpins in Colombia graduated from this Israeli school and came back and, were guilty of murder, torture, rape, all kinds of shit. And that guy, that Israeli contact, was the guy that was working with Rappaport in Antigua to run guns into Colombia.
Does the name Yar Klein sound familiar? Because that's one that pops up.
He's one of them. I think it's Eaton, Eitan, is the other guy that was doing the school arrangements. I'm almost sure that's his name.
Very funny that the Panama Canal pops up in there as far as how they were going to do this. And I was having a conversation earlier today, speaking of the Panama Canal.
Well, and of course, again, Gladio, that's how the whole Panama Canal thing came about, is we stole Panama. Panama was a state inside of a country called Colombia. It wasn't a country. It was a state. And one of the international syndicate's buddies come across some cheap land that was owned by some guys in France. And I'm not making any of this up. This is all true. And they were repped by Sullivan and Cromwell. And this other international syndicate man buys the property and wants to make a killing on it. So he gets the State Department basically to decide to build the canal in Panama, because it had already been approved and funded to be built in Nicaragua. There's a whole scam of how a postage stamp gets made. It's got a volcano on it, and it gets sent to all the senators, and the senators are all like, oh, is there a volcano in Nicaragua? Oh yeah, and it's right next to where the canal's going to be. That's a really bad thing. So they had already started building the Nicaraguan canal. They totally ditched that project and buy this property that this guy has secured the interest in through Sullivan and Cromwell, Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles. And they make a killing off of this property, but now Colombia says they want like $10 million for the ability to do the canal. And the U.S. is like, screw that, we ain't paying you jack shit. So they bring in Navy ships, land a party, and guess who was part of that party? Major Smedley Butler, the guy who later goes on and kind of reveals that they're trying to coup FDR. I mean, he's a big famous guy. But anyway, he's a major. He goes ashore. He basically makes short work of the fact that there's a little bit of a resistance. They do a false flag thing. And they get a guy that they've already gotten all primed up to say, hey, I'm now in charge of Panama. We're separating from Colombia. They put a flag down in the ground, and the U.S. calls up and goes, okay, we formally recognize that Colombia is now a country and no longer part of, Panama is a country and no longer part of Panama, and sends an ambassador down there, and the rest is history.
Crazy how all these people just blend all these different connections. Freaking crazy. And, yeah. and that a conversation that is with the World Wildlife Fund would lead to a connection to this guy, to this guy, to this guy, that we end up finding out that's involved with weapons trafficking, from weapons from Israel that's coming into Colombia. It's just, some people probably think that I do it on purpose. You're looking for the Israeli connection. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. It was on the screen.
And I will tell you, I was shocked. I was shocked when I found out Galil was building arms manufacturing all over South America. Everywhere we could a government, they put an arms factory there. That was shocking to me. And I just stumbled across that. That is not well known. Then once I started looking into the people that were part of the Galil Israeli company, I found those Israeli advisors to people like the Colombian president, the Panama president. And I'm like, why do they got to a Mossad Israeli advisor. Well, shit. The same thing with France going through Israel to provide weapons to South Africa. We did that. We went through Africa, or excuse me, Israel, to send the weapons to Iran as part of the Iran-Contra. We paid for weapons for Israel to ship weapons to South America into Angola against the people that we didn't want to win, but won anyway. We wanted the corrupt people to win. So I'm like, I've come away from this entire research project that Israel is nothing more than an arms trafficking country. That's what they do. And you can't say they don't, because they do.
The evidence is there. The receipts are there. I mean,
it's everywhere. And the thing that kind of got me from a finance standpoint, because I always have my business hat on, is we give money to Israel. Israel uses that money to go and build a factory in I think it was Guatemala, where the first Central America arms factory was built, because it was to conduct those operations against Nicaragua during the Iran-Contra thing. When you look at that, you can't. It blows my mind. That's just, I'm just gonna leave it there. It's just crazy, because I would have never imagined that to be the case.
I'm there with you. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I wasn't searching for it. Literally, I was looking at the names. We brought up the Bruce Rappaport, so of course I'm going through his thing, and then of course the Guns of Antigua pops up. So I'm like, oh, let me click on that, and then lo and behold, it makes the connections there, and I'm just like, it is what it is. Like I didn't put it there,
Liza says that because of all of the origins of Operation Gladio coming out of the Nazi Germany with Otto Skorzeny and stuff like that, her favorite saying is, you can't sling a dead cat and not hit a Nazi. We have also added an Israeli to that list because no matter where you go, you're going to find one, no matter where you go. One last guy, and then we'll call it a night. Herbert Batliner. He's in this whole group of 1001 Club members. He was a trust manager in Liechtenstein. And the importance of that is Liechtenstein is one of the favorite places to register these international arms companies, because Liechtenstein has an entire industry where they will stamp bills of sale, because you can sell military arms country to country. Well, Liechtenstein has an entire industry where they register companies, and it looks like they're exchanging arms with Liechtenstein when actually they're buying them with false paperwork in order to sell them on the black market. So this Herbert Batliner is actually the partner of Tibor Rosenbaum, who was a corrupt Mossad agent, going back to what we were just talking about, accused by the German BND, which is their CIA, for having laundered money for Chancellor Helmut Kohl, Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines, Pablo Escobar, and Mabatu, who is the guy we installed in Zaire, which is actually the Congo. And Batliner the entire time also had a job in the Vatican.
Okay. Some of these guys, and this Herbert Batliner being one of them, their digital footprint is, you could tell someone's keeping it clean. Like when you go to look for it, like whether it's Wikipedia or Wikidata, like Wikidata, it's like there's people that are actively making sure, because given all the stuff that this guy's attached to, you think there'd be a ton of information, but it looks like it's one of those ones that you got to dig through a couple layers if you want to get access to it.
Yeah. And it's just like what that guy was saying in one of his pieces, that in his digging, he actually made the effort to go onto Wikipedia and put some of the information he was discovering on there, and they banned him for life.
Got rid of him. Because like, look here, I'll bring up Herbert's page right here, just so people can see it. And you would have to change the language. Here, let me go. It's in German, so let me shift it to English. But yeah, interesting. That's what I'm saying.
So the bottom line is, the World Wildlife Fund is a modern day version of colonialism cloaked as conservation. And they have wrapped themselves into this whole green thing, which is another way to keep us all colonialized. That's all the green market is, no matter how you switch it.
I agree. Well, I know you said that's the last name. I do want to bring something up on the screen just to show people real quick, because I was super stoked when I heard about this. So let me bring it up on the screen. About 4 days ago now, 5 days ago now,
Yeah.
the Y Files, Operation Gladio, how the mob financed the CIA's secret army, an audience of almost 4 million people, and this has already had almost 1.5 million views. And I just want to remind everybody, all right, Colonel Towner and her team have been media blitzing this information out there to where somehow it landed on somebody's desk over at the Y Files, where they decided they wanted to do a 40-minute show. And you're talking about 1.5 million views on that particular episode, which means people are going to see that and they're going to be like, well, I want more of this. I want to research this. So they're going to type this stuff into the search engine. So to make it easier for them to find these things, you guys, when you guys make posts, put hashtag Gladio, hashtag Operation Gladio, and then make sure you tag the Colonel's handle. That way people get, just funneled to her to get this information.
What browser do you use?
For the general stuff, I'll use Google. If I start to find issues with Google, then I switch over to Brave and I'll start looking and find the stuff on Brave.
So search for Operation Gladio.
All right, give me 1 second. On Brave or on Google?
Either one.
All right, I'll do Google since I have that one up right now. Operation Gladio. Okay, let me switch screens so people can see what I'm doing. Share. All right, so I have Operation Gladio up on the screen.
Go down and see if you can find any of our stuff.
Washington Post, ResearchGate, Springer, NATO Secret Army, Substack, Wikipedia, YouTube. Not on the first page. Let's check the second page. Springer, Libcon, Amazon, NATO Secret Armies, Wiki. No. New York Times. Nope, nothing yet. Nothing yet. Let me go to the third page. Google Books looks like something I've looked up before.
What's interesting about that is there's probably no one on the internet, no one that has mentioned Operation Gladio more than us. No one.
And we do not exist. Oh, do not. Let me do, just out of curiosity, I'll even do Operation Gladio, Colonel Towner.
Oh, yeah. You'll see me then.
All right. So your Rumble channel pops up. Spreaker.com pops up. And then
But isn't that weird?
It is. It is. It is.
It's not like they would suppress it or anything.
I almost got mad right now because I saw a YouTube one. This is part 19. That's the blackmail one we did. And I was like, YouTube, wow. I was like, oh wait, I built a YouTube channel. I forgot. I've been saying so. I was like, someone's snatching up my content. But no, it's okay. That's cool. That's us. Everybody almost saw me get mad live on air real quick. Oh man.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, there we have it, you guys. Like I said, I cleaned up the description, you guys, to make it a little easier for you guys. But if you scroll towards the bottom, you're going to have all the links to find the kernel. You're going to have the links to find the series. And then, like I said, give me 30 minutes to an hour as soon as we end this show here. And then I'll have all the links that I've been bringing up on screen for you guys to just go click and save and continue with that. Other than that, kernel, for those that are new, because this audience is growing a lot every week. I'm pretty freaking excited about that. So for those that are new and catching this operation for the very first time, what kind of work do you got coming up and where can people find you?
So we're doing spaces on X Monday through Friday. We switched them to the evening this week. We had been doing them at noon for the last couple of weeks. We have went several weeks actually. We've went country by country, not doing every single one because there's over 80 of them that the CIA has cooed, in kind of giving you a broad history of a particular country and the Operation Gladio events that happened inside of the country in the form of a coup. And we did the Caribbean and Latin America, some Central and some South. And then we went to Europe and we did several of them, not all of them, but several of them in Europe. And we did Afghanistan and we did one on Kurdistan, which is, you know, it's a long story. If you go to my page at Colonel Towner, at Colonel Towner on X, my pinned post has a link, and it's like a Dropbox or something like that. That if you click on that, it has every single one of them on it. And it's you can play every one of them. And the one that we did on not Kurdistan, what was it? Turkestan, sorry. It's actually hilarious, and just in a nutshell, Turkestan is a made-up country, and we use that as a guise to arm and train Uyghurs to create false flag and terror things inside of China. Uyghurs are terrorists, trained terrorists by the CIA. We brought them over into Pakistan and this Turkestan. I laugh every time I say it because if you go back and look on old maps, you can actually find it, but it hasn't been a thing in a long, long time. But do you know, if you Google it, you can find the ceremony where they stood up and appointed a president, and the U.S. recognized him, and then he went back to his house in Virginia.
Oh my goodness. Jeez.
I'm not even kidding. Yeah, they stand up a country out of nowhere and designate the guy the president, and he actually lives in Virginia. And I didn't know that. So there's a whole different story to the Uyghur thing too. but that's just one of many that we've done. So, in going into Africa, which is where we were headed next, um, you can't go into Africa without talking about the WWF because they basically recolonialized Africa using the WWF. So we had to stop, and we've spent this week kind of going through the entire iteration of who set it up, what is it, where it's been. And I found this book called The Panda Leaks, which is all about them basically destroying all of this natural habitat and animals under the guise of saving animals. They're destroying people. And so we've been doing that this week. We will finish, well, we're going to do Africa, and then we're going to go to Asia. So that's kind of what the agenda is.
I'll tell you what the freaky thing is I've always looked at, this fight for true freedom and true liberty, like what we, not the facade that we've been living under, but true freedom and true liberty. I always thought, like, well, we got to get control of our government, we got to get control of our institutions, but it's so much more than that. Because all these NGOs, all these organizations, the churches, the banks, I mean, if you think about everything that we've covered in the Gladio series, like, that's a hell of a makeover to get to where we all want to get.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's been a year. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Colonel, I appreciate you staying up late with all of us. You guys, down in, like I said, in the links below are all the links to follow the Colonel. Catch the last week's episode we did with OJ Simpson. Very interesting. One question that somebody did have from the OJ Simpson thing, they said, Colonel, do you think he's really dead, or do you think he's in witness protection? So we'll finish on that question, and then we'll call it a night.
I don't get into, and I know this is probably, I don't get into any of that stuff. I mean, that whole, so-and-so's dead, went to Gitmo and all of that stuff, until you can show me some sauce. No. And no, I don't think, I mean, the guy's old. Come on. So no, I don't think he's alive. I don't think he's in witness protection. But I can't imagine living knowing. I mean, because he had to know those guys were into drugs. Whether he was as well, I assume he was, because everybody around him was, and had to have known that that's what happened. It's just the whole thing's crazy, and I just keep coming back to Alpha. Every single thing that we've ever been told's a lie. Everything. That's literally what I discovered at the end of the day. Do you have any rants you want to do?
We did. We had a big one that came in. Breadmaker62 dropped $100 Rumble rant. Said, thank you both for all you do for us. We appreciate you both more than you know. And Breadmaker's really contributed a lot of Rumble rants. So thank you very, very, very much to whoever you are. It's definitely appreciated. I'll tell you that much. The other thing that I will say, you guys, is I make the requests, but I want you guys to just hear me. Everybody, there are going to be several thousands of people that watch this over the next few days. Do me a solid. Go grab the Colonel's Rumble channel. Copy the link. Go to your Facebook, go to your Instagram, go to your X, and just say, must watch, and drop the link. Do that solid for the Colonel, because this information is getting more critical, and time is something that's not really on our side. In my opinion, the closer and closer we get to November, then people need to know what has been going on for a very long time, so they don't panic if we get into some of these worst case scenarios here in the next few months.
So that's the best point. Also on X, if you go to my pinned post and repost it, so people will have access to that, bookmark it. You're gonna want to pull it up, because as we get closer, things are going to start happening a lot faster, and you are going to want to have access to be able to sit someone down and go, play this. Once they start understanding the magnitude of what's going on, which you can easily see once you work your way through the Gladio series. And I have somebody almost every day, Alpha, going, oh my God, I just found you. I'm cramming. I'm on number 7, or I'm on number 13, or whatever. Yeah. And so people are going back and they're watching every single one of them. And they come in then and are part of our spaces and the Rumble things that we do. And it's been, and they bring stuff to me now. It's been so, I think they feel at ease now. They understand what's going on. And while it's a monumental push up, once you get up there and you can look around and see what's going on, everything makes so much more sense and you're not panicked anymore.
Somebody asked me 2 days ago, 3 days ago, they said, hey, I don't have a whole lot of time. So, pick 3 shows that I have to watch. I said, listen, that's impossible. So I'm not even going to entertain that idea. But I go, I'm going to give you 3 things and just approach these. And so I'm glad you had this conversation, because it reminds me of the conversation I had with this gentleman about that. And this is what I said. And timing is interesting too, because he asked this question at the perfect time where I had a lot of this already behind me. I said, first, the Operation Gladio series. Start from the beginning and just start watching. As you're doing that, get the 5th Generation Warfare books by Flynn and Boone. Especially, and I'll tell people this, normally, they came out with 5G warfare, then it was AI, and we're waiting the anticipation of session 3. And I would always tell people, hey, just start with 5G, then go into the AI. I'll tell you, if you haven't started with any of them, start with the last one, The Role of the Church. As a matter of fact, here it is. Y'all can see my funny bookmarkers and stuff that I have in here. But here we go. It's what I was expecting, but there's a lot more that I wasn't expecting, that I was like, holy shit. Like, holy shit. This book, it relieved me with what the work they put into it, but it also concerned me, because I said, there's only one reason you're teaching people these things. And as you guys get into it, you understand what I'm talking about. The third one is, and we talked about him earlier today, go to Dylan's website and get all those maps. If you study this and you watch the colonel's work and you watch the maps, and that's your damn desk, right? You're going to just be like, oh my God, this is what it all looks like. So that would be my trio. So if you guys want to know, that's my trio of what you guys need to get.
So we had a spaces at 7:30 tonight, and I recommended everybody go watch your show you just did on Israel with that gentleman.
Mike King.
But I was a little disappointed, I've got to say this up front, that you didn't use Operation Gladio in there, because there was like 3 times that he was talking about Operation Gladio, and I'm like, he's going to say it here. He's going to say it here. He's going to say it here.
It was here. It was here. And
I know.
And finally,
he was definitely talking about it.
He was.
Yeah.
And somebody in the chat finally, they put in the Rumble chat, they put Gladio. So as soon as I saw it, I said poof, and I brought it up on the screen. So it still got in there.
So, and that is what has been amazing to me through this entire thing, is people like him, who obviously is very aware. Does he not know what it is? Why don't they use the words?
They're going to know. They're going to know. Absolutely. Yep. Well, Colonel, I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody that's on the East Coast that has stayed up late with us to watch this show. This was a live. So with that, you guys, you can catch the Alpha Warrior Show Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. I've been doing a test run because normally I've been going at 9 o'clock, but coming in late today kind of helped. Maybe I might end up shifting this. I don't know. We'll talk about it. You guys leave it down in the comments. Do you want the show at 9:30 Eastern? Do you like the show at 9 Eastern? Or maybe even earlier? I really want to know what works for you guys in the audience. So with that, I saved all the commercials to the end. So stick around, support the people that support this show. And with that, you guys, Semper Fi, God bless, first in, last out. Till next time.
I'm excited to announce we're having a huge MyPillow spring sale. And here's a few examples. Buy one of our MyPillow 2.0s, you get another MyPillow 2.0 absolutely free. Made with cooling technology, the best pillow ever just got even better. And this just in, 9 brand new colors and styles of our Percale bed sheets. They're made with the finest long staple cotton, and now you can save 50% or more. That's as low as $24.98. And for the first time this year, I'm bringing you our My Slippers and Sandals for as low as $25 a pair. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get your MyPillow 2.0s. Buy one, get one free. Percale sheets as low as $24.98. My Slippers and Sandals as low as $25 a pair. And for a limited time, when you order $75 or more, your entire order ships absolutely free.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
Are you worried about the effects that higher inflation rates will have on your investments? Are you trying to secure your retirement savings against losses, but you notice that inflation is a hot topic these days? But how dangerous are low inflation rates on your retirement savings? An inflation rate of 2% may not seem like much, but it means that prices will just about quintuple over the lifetime of the average American. And 4% average inflation rate means that something that costs $1 when they're born will cost $23 when they die. That demonstrates the danger of even low inflation rates. So when it comes to gold and inflation rates, many investors want to know whether inflation rates have an effect on gold prices. What history indicates is that over the long term, increased inflation should lead to correspondingly higher gold prices. From September 1971 to August 2020, gold grew 7.5 times as much as inflation. Not only can an investment in physical gold help protect your assets against the damage done by inflation, it can also help grow the value of your retirement portfolio over the long term. If you're looking to protect your retirement assets, why wait until stock markets crash and gold begins to rise in price?